Hey guys, what's up? Seth here from Pixelborn Studios. Today we're going to be doing a really cool series, I think, kind of inspired by Tim Ruswick from Game Dev Underground. He always says that what you should do when you really want to get into game dev and to get a better idea of scope is to make Pong. So that's what we're going to be doing today. I'm going to show you guys how to make Pong in Unity using no assets from the asset store, using just what Unity gives you. This is kind of geared towards very, very early beginners. It's going to teach you the basics of physics and how to use 2D in Unity and how to prototype assets. A bunch of cool stuff that it's kind of honestly a pain in the ass to figure out by yourself. So we're going to be doing that today, and I'm super excited about it because I feel like, as you guys know, I'm not the best in Unity or at programming, so we're going to be doing something that's a little bit more inside of the scope of my knowledge and my understanding, and we're going to try to have a good time while we're doing it. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to take a look at our scene view. This isn't really going to be like a I know nothing about Unity tutorial, just kind of a good exercise, honestly. If you're new to Unity and you've never made a game in Unity before, it can be kind of daunting. So I'm going to show you guys step by step how to make something a little bit more simple. If you have no Unity knowledge, I would highly recommend going to unitylearn.com, or it's learnunity.com. I don't remember. If you Google Unity Learn, you will find it. They have a free like 40-hour course that teaches you how to use Unity. You can do as much or as little of it as you want. I kind of stopped towards the end. I felt like I got everything I was going to get out of it, but it's a good place to start just to know how to like adjust your editor and find the windows you need and basic coding and really, really simple bottom level stuff like that. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is going to make a plane. And quick misstart where I realized that you can't use planes, to my knowledge, in 2D in Unity. We're just going to go with cube. So you might wonder why I am using 3D objects in Unity for a 2D project, which is honestly a fair question, in my opinion. And it's really just because they don't really have any blank 2D objects. If you don't notice, a lot of these are kind of more like utilities and less like objects. So when I'm prototyping using the basic Unity objects, I always use 3D objects. So we're going to rename this cube the background. I'm just kind of going to get the scene set up before we really get into it. So yeah, I'll come back to you guys when the scene's all set up. Alright, so we've kind of got the basic game set up. Check in the game view, make sure it doesn't look too bad. Looks like Pong to me. So here's where the real game begins. Get an empty folder for these walls real quick. So if I need to do anything to them, I can do it to that empty object. Cool. So now comes the actual hard part of this tutorial, in my opinion, which is scripting this game. So there's a few things we can do right off the bat. Everything is going to need, it already has a box collider. Since we're using 2D, we're going to need to add a 2D box collider, and we're also going to have to add a rigid body 2D. So this one is going to be, they all should be kinematic, I'm fairly sure. I'm fairly sure. I'm not 100% on that. We'll find that out in a minute if we did that wrong. We're going to add rigid bodies to these. We're going to make them all kinematic. And we're going to add box colliders to these like we already talked about. And then the ball also is going to need a new collider. It's going to need a circle collider. And it also is going to need a rigid body, and it's also going to be kinematic. I guess actually I am wrong. These are going to have to be 2D rigid bodies, and gravity scale is going to be 0. So this is kind of how you get around a problem in Unity, which is that Unity does have some problems, which is that in 2D the top is always the top and the bottom is always the bottom. Unity doesn't really inherently support top-down views or things without gravity. So if you put things as dynamic, which basically just means gravity acts on them in rigid bodies, then they will always fall, basically. So, and that's not what we want. So if we click play, we have 3 things that don't move, which is actually a fairly good start. So now if we create a new C# script, we're going to call this our player controller. Something that I've learned from a lot of other developers is that starting with player movement is always a good idea, because if you can't get player movement down, then you probably can't make the game. It's just like kind of a general idea, I think. So the next thing we're going to do is to get input in. So we're going to use getAxis. We should probably use getAxis raw. And then we'll use the vertical axis. So I am back with more information. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to say we're going to track our input, and we're going to get axis raw like I initially said. We're going to track the vertical axis. I was actually on the right path, which is the sort of frustrating part about this kind of stuff is you can be on the right path and then get something wrong and confuse yourself and then be all over the place after that. So then if it's greater than 0, we're going to do this game object .transform.translate. Basically all this does is move something in a certain distance and direction, which might not seem like we would need that, because if used incorrectly, all it does is just move it directly. But when we multiply it by time.delta time, what that does is basically just moves it over time. It allows us to move in a direction at a speed instead of just moving by 1. So I'll show you exactly how this works in just a second. So now if we hold up, which means, or down, sorry, which means the vertical axis is less than 0, greater than 0, then we move up slowly. So if I take away time.delta time, every time the axis is greater than 0, oops, we just move by 1. And we move extremely quickly, which is not what we want. Also, the other thing that time.delta time does is it makes it so that your frame rate doesn't affect how quickly something moves. So if your frame rate is high and you're not using time.delta time, you'll actually move faster, because the update function is running once per frame. So if you're getting more frames, it's running more times instead of being determined by how long the button is actually held down. Why is this not making a difference? I just dumb. Just dumb. Okay. So now up does up. So I'm gonna quickly duplicate that. for down as well. Cool. So now the player should be able to move up and down. We can decide later if this is something that we want to increase or decrease the speed of. It seems pretty slow right now, so I'm actually going to do something and future-proof myself. I'm going to, instead of putting 1 there, I'm going to put a variable called speed, and I'm going to declare that variable up here, and I'm going to do private, well, we'll do public so we can access it on the editor. Public float speed equals, let's start it at 2. Now we should move twice as fast, going up and down. Oh, we'll have to make speed negative though, because or else, oh no, it works, cool. Alright guys, so this is the last thing we'll do is get the ball rolling, for lack of a better term. So all I've done off camera is put this ball controller script on the ball by just dragging it on there. I just put another one on, so I'm going to remove it. So we're not going to do all of the ball physics right now. All we're going to do is literally just get the ball moving. And literally to do that, we're just going to do the exact same thing that we did for the other one. That's all we're going to do. And then we'll just get the ball moving towards us at a fairly slow speed, but as you can see, when it hits us, it's just going to continue to run into us. So we're going to fix that in the next episode. I know this one was kind of rough. I haven't done movement in a while, this kind of movement at least. And honestly, this series is just as much for me as it is for you guys. So it might take us a little while. And I hope you guys are cool with that, because, you know, I feel like you might learn a lot by just seeing my mistakes and by seeing how I fix them and that sort of stuff. And if you guys like the series, let me know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. It helps me out a ton, and lets me know that you guys like the series. So, yeah, thanks.